I think we're ready to go. Team, all ready? Okay. And so I'm Andrea Hochhalter. I am with Peer Support Association of North Dakota, and I'll just be guiding today's Lunch and Learn, but I am not your main presenter. We'll introduce Andrea Saylor in just a moment for that. Are you able to see the slide deck? Okay, great. Wonderful. So today we are spending our time for our quarterly lunch and learn on how peers can support brain injury survivors. Before we get into our main content, just a little refresher and reminder of who Peer Support Association Network is. So to share with us about PSAND is Bonnie.
Hi. So my name's Bonnie Riley. I am in the Minot area. I work at First District Health Unit, and I am a peer support for our syringe service program here. Also a tobacco cessation coordinator. And I'm going to go over a little bit of reason for our purpose and everything. So we are a statewide network dedicated to advancing peer support in North Dakota. We are peer operated and directed with a mission to help people on their journey to recovery and wellness. And we promote leadership, advocacy, education, and support. So a little bit about us. We are building connections. PSAND provides peers with the North Dakota-based network of connection and support. We are integrating and innovative through collaboration. PSAND plans to assist organizations and systems in integrating and utilizing our peers. We advance peer support. PSAND thrives to advance the peer workforce to grow its recognition as a valued profession. We're a voice for peers. PSAND maintains a clear understanding of the needs and interests of peer workers and acts as a shared voice. So who are we here for? PSAND is for everyone who believes that peer support makes a difference in people's lives. And we definitely know that is the truth. Peer support specialists, we're peer support specialists, prospective peer specialists, peer supervisors, we're allies of peer support, and agencies that utilize peer support services. So if everybody wants to jump into the chat and just let us know who you are and where you're coming from, that would be great.
Thank you, Bonnie. So I love the participation today because we have such a large group. We're not able to do individual introductions, but yes, please share out your information, who you are, maybe where you are, organization you work for, the type of peer support you do with one another, allowing us to see who's in the group, and you guys can reach out and share with one another, and you can have some chats over there. As we do our presentation today, you're welcome to throw in questions into the chat or comments. We will be moderating it. We will have some time for questions at the end. We'll have some dialogue during as well too, but that'll help us manage and facilitate today's lunch and learn conversation by using the chat that way. So with that, let me introduce our presenter, Andrea Saylor, and tell us a little bit about herself as well. So Andrea, she's with the North Dakota Brain Injury Network, our guest presenter today. We're super excited to have her join us with her specialty and her expertise with brain injury. So Andrea, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about today's objectives?
Absolutely, thank you. So like she said, my name is Andrea Saylor. I live just south of Jamestown. I am a licensed speech language pathologist, but I just joined North Dakota Brain Injury Network this year as a resource facilitator. Today's objectives for the Lunch and Learn, I hope that after attending the session that you will be able to explain how an individual can sustain a brain injury, some common symptoms after a brain injury, explain why screening for brain injury is important, and then give some examples of ways to implement structure with some of the peers that you're working with. Okay, so is it okay if I share my screen now?
Yeah, go ahead. I will stop sharing my screen and then I will let you share yours.
Sounds good. So we'll do a little switch here. Can you see my presentation? Okay.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're just gonna jump in today then. And at any time, like Andrea said, feel free to ask questions in the chat, or if we're at a good time to break down, we can also ask them out loud and have a conversation too. So first of all, what is a brain injury? There's obviously some stereotypical brain injuries out there, but going over North Dakota's definition for brain injury means damage to the brain or the coverings of the brain, which produces an altered mental state and results in a decrease in cognitive, behavioral, emotional, or physical functioning. The term does not include an insult of degenerative, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, etc., or congenital nature. Congenital would mean if there was brain injury that happened before birth. So this is the brain injury that we follow with the North Dakota Brain Injury Network. Going over to the left side of the screen, as a whole, we can consider kind of the umbrella term for all types of brain injuries after birth, called acquired brain injury, or ABI for short. And then from there, we have two different types of brain injury. I don't want you to get hung up on the terminology with these, because the terms are traumatic brain injury, like TBI, and non-traumatic brain injury. But the non-traumatic brain injuries can be just as emotional and traumatic as the traumatic brain injuries. It's just how they're caused and how they got their terminology name. So the orange is traumatic brain injury. These are kind of the go-to brain injuries that people think of. A traumatic brain injury is caused by any event from external forces. So anything coming in impact with the skull or head. So that might be an assault if a person is in an altercation with another person, and if they get hit with a fist, a bat, a pipe, etc. A person could fall and hit their head. Blast injuries, like in the military. Motor vehicle crashes, if a person's in a car accident and hits their head on something. Sport contacts like football, hockey, lacrosse, anything caused by damage from outside of the body would be categorized as a traumatic brain injury. The other type of brain injury is termed non-traumatic brain injury. Non-traumatic brain injuries are caused by internal events. So anything that causes brain damage from inside of the head. So that would be like a stroke, a brain tumor. If there's a blood vessel that bursts, like an aneurysm. If there's less oxygen support to the brain needs oxygen and blood to survive. So if there's a reduced or cut off amount of oxygen, brain cells die, and then that can cause a brain injury. So that might be if a person has like a near drowning, strangulation, choking, and drug overdoses. When a person overdoses and they lose consciousness from it, there's a less amount of oxygen supply to the body, which also means less amount of oxygen going to the brain. So exactly kind of what I just explained, less oxygen to the brain equals less cells dying equals brain injury. So a lot of people don't consider overdoses to be a brain injury, but it definitely can be. And then another type of non-traumatic brain injury would be like infections, like meningitis or encephalitis. So just to throw some North Dakota numbers out there, each year in North Dakota, an estimated 5,500 individuals sustain traumatic brain injuries. So remember, TBIs is just part of it. This doesn't include the strokes or aneurysms or anoxic events, anything like that. So 5,500 TBIs, that's quite a big number in my mind. More than 14,000 of North Dakota adults reported that they've been told at least one time that they've had a stroke. And then more than 13,000 of us are currently living with a long-term disability from TBI. I think it's pretty important to also mention undiagnosed brain injuries. So undiagnosed brain injuries are very common. I work with a lot of individuals who have undiagnosed brain injuries, and these are often referred to as the hidden disability. Like the person might look fine from the outside, but in the inside, they have that disability that nobody can see from their physical appearance. I even have individuals who I just worked with someone who last winter they were taking off their Christmas lights off of their outside. They were on a ladder and they fell and kind of bumped up their shoulder and arm. They went into the ER. The nurse and the doctor addressed, I think they got a cast or a sling or something for their arm. They didn't even ask about, oh, did you lose consciousness? Did you hit your head? So they left the hospital thinking, oh, I went to the hospital. My doctor assessed me. I'm fine. Okay, but maybe weeks go down the road and, you know, they're not sleeping very good. They're a little bit more emotional. And well, now they don't know what's going on. Well, they had an undiagnosed brain injury. The doctor and the nurse didn't take into consideration that, and the patient didn't report that they were actually, they hit their head pretty good too when they fell off the ladder. So unfortunately that's just pretty common. So these individuals with undiagnosed brain injuries, they're at a higher risk of dropping out of school, start abusing substances. They may fail at relationships. They may end up in mental behavioral health systems. They're at a higher risk of becoming homeless later in their life. And they may be unable to obtain or maintain a job. So systems that have primary functions other than brain injury, kind of what I was saying with my example last slide, often do not document brain injury. And unless medical documentation is available, they often don't know how. So brain injury screening can be helpful, especially in those situations. So especially in the work that you do with peer supports, there's definitely a need for screening when you're working with people and you have coexisting diagnoses that are maybe common with brain injuries, or you maybe even see some red flags of some symptoms of brain injury. You know, it can be very important to do a screening. The people that I work with who recover from their brain injury the best are the ones that are the most educated about their brain and about their recovery. So yeah, there's definitely a need for screening. Recovery after a brain injury is fastest in the first 6 months after the physical injury to the brain. There is the term neuroplasticity. I always tell people the brain has millions and millions of neural pathways made up of dendrons and axons and neurons, and they're all connected within our brain. So if you can think of a city that has many roads, Okay, I'm thinking of like Tokyo or somewhere in California, New York. And if you had this intersection with dozens of roads, and if a tornado just swept through them and ripped up all of those roads, well, a person still has to get from home to work. If they can't go down the interstate, how do they get there? They go on a detour, okay? That's what happens when our brain is injured. If our neural pathways are injured from a brain injury, the brain tries to create almost like a neural detour so the person can still do what they want to, okay? If the damage is significant enough, that detour might not be possible for some time, but that's always the goal. I always tell people, you know, if you're on interstate, you're going 75 or 80. When we go on a detour, detours are usually what, 35 or 40. So after a brain injury, their speed of processing might be a little slower. Their memory might not be as fast. Their concentration might just be a little bit harder for them because their brain is trying to go on that detour. So I'll give you some strategies to try to, okay, well, I identified this person has a brain injury. What can I do? Okay, so we'll kind of go over that at the end a little bit more. If a person gets out sometime after their injury, they may have what's called like a plateau in their physical recovery. And then those individuals have what's more similar to like a chronic condition that has changing needs. So you'll meet people who had maybe an injury 15 years ago, and they're still experiencing symptoms from it. Brain injuries are like snowflakes. I really like talking about this because just like snowflakes, every brain is obviously similar, but every single brain is a tish bit different than the next brain. Just kind of like our fingerprints, every human has fingerprints, but they're just very, very, very slightly different from the next. That's exactly how brains are. So an injury to the brain may vary in the extent of the injury. Did a person just, you know, hit their head? They didn't get knocked out, you know, they didn't go to the ER. They recovered within 2 or 3 days fully. But then the next person might hit their head and they lose consciousness for 2.5 hours. They need to go into the hospital and they have lasting symptoms for the rest of their life. So injuries can vary in the extent of injury, the area of injury. Did it happen in the area of the brain that controls language? Did it happen in the area of the brain that controls attention? And then injury of the brain may also vary in the type of damage. So this might be related to the nature of the injury, the severity of the injury, how it was occurred, and then obviously the quickness of medical response. If a person was in a drowning accident, the faster that ambulance can get there to help them and help them get that oxygen supply in 1.5 minutes versus 3.5 minutes, that time is brain time. So the quickness of medical response can also vary on how bad the injury may be. Some brief symptomology. Brain injury related effects that can complicate individuals' activities. They can complicate an individual's to be independent and with their self-management, and even their ability to interact with others. Impaired cognition and behavioral impacts can have widespread effects. Essentially, anytime a person is awake, their cognition is actively processing things. Even you just listening to me, you're using sustained attention, working memory, auditory comprehension. I could go down the list. So when a person with a brain injury, even if they're just sitting and watching TV, that might even be stimulating their brain more than what it did before. Emotional dysregulation, impulsivity, and impaired processing speed are often symptoms we see after brain injury. And these can be really complicated, and they may complicate a person's everyday life, because especially if they're involved with substances or within the criminal justice system, these symptoms may come across that, oh, if they have impaired processing and emotional dysregulation, and if they get pulled over and the officer is asking them questions and they're not able to answer quick or answer appropriately, they are fumbling on their words, they might come across as disobedient. It might come across that they're lying. It might come across as they're non-compliant. We see that a lot with substance abuse treatment, and our individuals with brain injury that go through that, they may have a hard time with traditional treatment strategies, because it's not addressing their cognitive deficits. So really kind of narrowing down what's going on, and giving them strategies and supporting them in that, so they can function a little bit easier. When we are talking about symptoms, when you're working with a person with a brain injury, it's very, very, very important to connect the dots. So there's 4 main domains of symptoms that we talk about, and they can overlap significantly. So I like talking through this slide with an example. So say Bob, you're working with Bob, and during your session with him, he freaks out and has this huge emotional outburst. He's breaking down, he's crying, he's yelling, he's swearing, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? Okay. However, later you find out, because you're like, we got to connect the dots. What's really going on, Bob? You find out that Bob woke up this morning. He didn't sleep very good last night. He maybe got 3 or 4 hours on and off. The outside alarms and lights were going off, so he just couldn't sleep. So he woke up tired, and he woke up with a headache because of that. Okay. So even waking up on the wrong side of the bed is, now that he's tired, now his speed of processing is slow. He just can't catch up with people's conversations. He's constantly feeling like he's one step behind. And his memory isn't working very good. He keeps forgetting things. He forgot his address. He forgot his telephone number. He keeps asking people to repeat themselves because he can't remember. And then that's frustrating him. Oh, I slept like crap last night. I can't remember. My words are slipping up. I can't get my words out of my mouth today. And then by the time you meet with him in the afternoon, he's had it, right? And he has this emotional outburst, okay? If you only address the emotions and only try to help him through that emotional processing without connecting the dots and supporting him through the headaches, the fatigue, sleep strategies, fatigue strategies, memory strategies, delayed processing strategies, word finding strategies, 7 other things you could help him address. If you addressed those 7 other things with him, he probably could have avoided that emotional outburst in your session, okay? So whenever you have a person experience symptoms with you, just really try to think whole person. Because the one symptom that they just showed you is likely related to some other ones. Okay. And especially with that, if you're working with someone, and I don't expect you all to be brain injury experts. Okay. I have 7 years of formal education. I'm a certified brain injury specialist, and I have 5 years of experience working with brain injury individuals. I don't expect you to know what you're doing right away. If you have a person and you're like, oh, I think I'm on the right track, but I could just use a little bit of assistance, that's why we're here at the North Dakota Brain Injury Network too. If you wanted to put a referral in, we could help you help them. So always keep that in mind too. And if you are more interested in learning more about brain injury, and if this really does interest you, and if you're seeing this come across in a lot of the peers that you're working with, we'll go over some other things that we can consider you doing if this is the track that you want to go down a little bit more too. Supporting a person with a brain injury, you know, in whole person view is very important. Like I just said, without proper supports, brain injury can lead to mental health problems and addiction issues that bring people living with that hidden brain injury into the criminal justice system, or unfortunately suicide, or substance abuse. Sometimes it's the chicken or the egg. Did the brain injury come first and then they got mental health into substances? Or maybe they got into substances and then they got their brain injury. It works both ways. It's kind of like the chicken or the egg sometimes. And it's like, okay, well, how can I support them? We really stress at the North Dakota Brain Injury Network structure, because helping a person structure their day, structure their week, structure their month, structure their life can be very important with a brain injury. So specifically talking about kids, structured offered by schools, parents, communities can really fall away as children go through adolescence into adulthood. So a brain injury that occurs at age 7 may not be fully unmasked, as what we say. A person might not notice side effects or symptoms from that 7-year-old brain injury until a person gets a little older. And I'll kind of explain why. At the age of 7, our higher level cognitive skills aren't fully developed yet. Okay. Our brains don't fully develop in females until about the age of 25, and males until about 26, 27. So if you can imagine a brain at age of 7, their social experiences, higher level problem solving, executive functioning skills, some of those higher level skills aren't fully developed yet. And you could argue that a 7-year-old may not need those complex cognitive skills because they aren't working a full-time job, they aren't managing finances and all of that at the age of 7, right? So when the 7-year-old, maybe with a concussion or a mild brain injury, once they get into the 12, 13, 14 years of life, when that brain starts to develop those higher level skills, and then a problem comes and they're not able to do large assignments in middle school, and socially they're kind of struggling, and obviously going through puberty too, it might not be for 5 or 6 years after that until it's unmasked. And talking about a little bit of anatomy here, the frontal lobe and temporal lobes, so the front of your brain and the bottom side of your brain, those area of the brains, those injuries earlier are sometimes unable to adequately respond to the expectations of regulation and functioning when they're older. Okay, so when you're working with a person with a brain injury, or even a person who needs a little bit of cognitive support, ROBOTS is an acronym that you can keep in mind. The R stands for reduce the amount of information. Don't be wordy with this population. Reduce the amount of information as much as you can. If you're giving instructions or directions, keep it at one at a time. Provide information in a written and verbal. So if you're telling, I use medication because it's an easy example. If you're telling Bob, okay, Bob, you have 3 pills to take at 5 o'clock. You have to take them with food. That's a lot of information. The time, amount of pills, and what he has to do. That's 3 things. If I broke it down and say, okay, Bob, got his attention. Okay, you have pills to take tonight. Pause. You need to take 3 pills. Pause. 5 o'clock with food. Okay, break it down. Even better, I just gave the information verbal. Even better if I had a sticky note on hand and wrote it down with him. Okay, written and verbal. Breaks are helpful. Often is better, routines help. If you are meeting with a peer once a week, try to do it every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Because if you keep that routine versus Tuesday at 2, next week, Thursday at 9, the following week, Monday at 12:30, if you kept that routine every single week, that's going to help their brain structure. If you're giving a person information, ask them to paraphrase it or repeat it after you give it to them. Because if they have a hard time remembering what you said, understanding what you said, they're going to have a hard time repeating it. If they can't repeat it back to you, it's going to be hard for them to follow through with what you're asking them to do. Okay, take your time, go slowly, and then simple, organized information is best. Okay, brain injury framework for support. Super important to not treat the brain injury as separate. So when you're working with peers, even if you're a peer and if you've never had a brain injury before, you can have the tools and educate yourself in an appropriate way to be able to support these people with a brain injury. And one of the things that we stress is don't separate it from if they have mental health and brain injury. Don't separate them, include them together and really involve both as part of them. I learned at a very early age in my clinical career is to, not just treat the diagnosis. You want to treat the whole person, and whether they have brain injury and substance and mental health, you want to include it all together. So some reasons why schedules and structure are important for the brain. The brain already kind of knows what's automatically next. They may not need to use a planner every minute of their day if they already kind of know their general structure. And the brain doesn't need to waste energy always constantly thinking, what's next? What's next? What's next? Even just kind of having the brain on edge of not having a structure or a schedule can use a lot of brain power. So then, yeah, just being able to feel more in control and being able to enjoy your day in life a little bit more. So how you can help a peer implement structure, it begins right when you wake up. A regular wake time for the brain is super important. I usually say try to have like an hour window. So if you typically wake up at 6 during the week, try not to sleep in any later than 7 on the weekend. Because if you sleep in until 9:30 or 10, well, then the rest of your schedule for the rest of the day is thrown off, and then the brain is freaking out. Okay, so regular wake time, morning rituals, even just first you undress and shower, groom, brush your teeth, do your hair, and then you go have breakfast. Or maybe they want to have breakfast before they shower, whatever. Maybe after that, they do some type of fitness activity. Meal times should be within that hour again. Breakfast, lunch, and supper all at the same time every day. Leisure times, if a person takes a nap, having it be at the same time every day. Evening rituals, same thing. And then a regular bedtime. If you're going to bed at 10 or 10:30 during the week, shouldn't be really any later than 11 or 11:30 on the weekend. These are some things that can kind of help you implement structure, like meal plans, alarms, and even like using Alexa on your phone, sleep time tracker. These are all on our website. And then assistive technology, especially for the people that already use phones, really starting them to use technology to be their, help them be their memory. But North Dakota Assistive is also a company that kind of specializes in this. So I've even had 85, 90, 95-year-olds who don't even know a lick of technology. And North Dakota Assistive can really help them set those up to help them structure their day. Community integration is super important with brain injury. So if you're working with a peer and they're not really getting out and about at all, really trying to get them integrated into the community, not even for just the socialization aspect of it, but the brain loves doing new things and the brain loves productivity. So even if it's just, if they typically online shop, even just going out in the store and shopping, being surrounded by people, going out for lunch with friends, volunteering if they can't work, type of thing. Okay. Resource facilitation is what we can do at the North Dakota Brain Injury Network, kind of what I was saying earlier. We have three resource facilitators for the state, and each of us are kind of in a different region, but all of our services are free, and essentially we can work with professionals who are working with brain injuries, and if the professional themselves need assistance on, how do I work with Bob? He can't remember anything. He keeps having emotional outbursts. We can give you strategies on, okay, well, let's try this your next session with them. Let's try this next time, or just educate you more on his brain injury as a whole. And then we could also work with Bob himself too, if needed. We can provide support. And then we can also help locate other professionals. So say if they had some visual concerns, we could find a neuro-ophthalmologist for them, or, you know, you get the point. So some helpful tools that we have a screening. Anybody can do a screen if we train you on it, and that can be super quick. Our screener is only 4 questions. So it can take less than 5 minutes. So if you have a person that you're like, oh man, Bob really has some red flags during our sessions, I wonder if he could possibly have a history of a brain injury. And a brain injury doesn't have to be just from last week or 1 year ago. I work with a lot of individuals who we identify a brain injury from 1985, and we can still work with them. So keep that in mind. So if you're interested in more screening, you can always reach out to us and we can get you some more information on it. And then we also have a symptom inventory. This is what we can provide to individuals to help them identify some symptoms and common trends in their symptoms. So it's 4 pages and it goes through 9 of the most common brain injury symptoms. And it just kind of asks about their everyday life functioning. And then we have tip sheets. I was hoping to go into these a little bit more, but I don't know if we'll have time today. But we have 1-page tip sheets for different domains of symptoms. And we have tip sheets for survivors, and then also tip sheets for professionals. So if you're working with a person and if they have a concern of their attention, I just can't concentrate, I can't pay attention, we could provide them this tip sheet. And then we could also provide you as their peer support specialist, the professional version, and it will give you some strategy ideas on what things that you can try to implement in your sessions to help them through that symptom and be able to benefit more from the services that you're providing them.
Say, Andrea, I'm
Yes.
going to interject for just a quick moment.
Mhm.
As I'm listening to all this content, I thought of a couple of questions I'm super curious about to ask the group. So I just put them into a very quick poll that I'd like to launch. I think we have about 20 participants. And I'm just wondering from these participants, what is your experience with providing support to individuals with brain injury? So I mean, this is a very simple survey. So I'm going to launch it. I just have 2 questions that I would love to hear back on to help me understand, our audience and your experience with peer support in brain injury. So go ahead and do that. You can keep going on. I can let you know what the responses are later on,
Great.
but thanks,
Yeah,
Andrea.
yes, that's a great idea. Thanks for doing that, Andrea. So on our website, you can find our tip sheets. If you just Google NDBIN, North Dakota Brain Injury Network, we have that red banner across the top. And if you go into the brain injury information tab and go into the life after brain injury, you will find all of those tip sheets. And then most of the tip sheets also have a recording. So each recording is about, 5 to 8 minutes of one of my coworkers going through each domain in a video. So if you have an individual that maybe their memory, I just have problems with Bob's memory, you could go watch that recording and learn a little bit more on what memory is and how you can support them too. Okay. And then how to refer if you would like some more support with any of the people that you serve. On our website, we just have an upper tab in the right-hand corner that's client referral that will bring you to a page that directs you on how you can refer people to us. And you could even refer yourself as a peer support specialist. They don't just have to be survivors with brain injuries. If you want to learn more about brain injury, you can put in a referral for yourself and one of us will call you and say, hey, Andrea, I saw your referral as a professional. What can we help you with? And we can direct you to courses or, anything like that. And then we decided right before this to add this too. As a peer support, there is an endorsement to be endorsed with brain injury. So if you're interested in learning more about brain injury, we do offer online training to help train you a little bit more in this. This presentation was just very, very, very introduction on brain injury. But if this is really kind of interesting you more and saying, I want to learn how to support these people a little bit more in my work with them, this is how we would get you there. And we could even do these if we would get interest in the group. We could always host these live with you on Zoom and have it a little bit more peer support based. And then we could open it up. And if anybody had people they're working with and giving those real life examples, because I think that's how professionals learn the best. If you're listening to examples and problem solving with your coworkers and whatnot, we could always consider that too. So we have 5 courses: Introduction to Brain Injury, Cognitive and Behavioral Consequences of Brain Injury, Primary Care and Brain Injury, Pediatric Brain Injury, and then Substance Use and Brain Injury. So you can also do these online. They are technically $25 online, but if you sign up and use the code NDBIN courses, I can put that in the chat. When you register and put NDBIN courses, they would come down to be free. Okay. Anybody who's a North Dakota resident can take these courses for free. And then this is kind of just what some of our tip sheets look like. Like I said, I could talk about these all day, but we just don't have the time to do that today. But like I said, if you're interested, let's set something up so we can really kind of give you some more real life functional examples on how you can support people in your everyday work with them. And then this I did want to point out too. This is what the tip sheets for professionals look like. So on the right-hand side, it just gives you some more strategies that you can implement in your sessions. Just a little bit more directed towards the professionals than the survivor themselves. Okay, I went 2 minutes over, but we wanted to leave the rest of the time for questions. And I think Andrea has a little bit more information too. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. We do have time for questions and some dialogue around the content that if you want to drill into it. So the responses from the surveys, we had 13 of the group participate, and equally, 15 people participate, and equally to both questions, it was a response of, oh, it just changed, update, live update. So to the question, have you ever or are you currently providing peer support to a person with brain injury? Out of 15 people, 13 of you said yes. 13 of you said yes. So largely this group is doing peer support to individuals with brain injury. And not surprisingly then to the second question, are you a person with lived experience or maybe providing support to another person, a loved one with an injury? And 12 out of 15, so 80%, almost the same, said yes. So there is a lot of experience on this call. So what thoughts, questions, reactions do you have to what Andrea shared today? Who has the first comment or question?
I have a question about what some things that I see in the mental health world that I'm wondering if they could be considered brain injuries. For instance, someone who has been on medication a long time and has a movement disorder or tardive dyskinesia, is that considered a brain injury? And then I also have individuals that have had electroconvulsive therapy and have like long-term memory loss or something like that. Is that considered a brain injury?
Sure, yeah. So I guess I would, with the long-term medication use and some of the movement disorders, for medication use as the cause of a brain injury, I don't know much information on that. I haven't really heard anything like that before. But could there be a coexisting problem causing some of those movement disorders? Possibly. We could always dive a little deeper. And if you have people in mind, we could always dive a little deeper into them too. But yeah, just hard for me to kind of answer that with that information. And then let's see, what was the second question again?
It was about like long-term effects of electroconvulsive therapy, shock therapy.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I haven't ran across that either. I would have to do some research and I can definitely get back to you on that too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who has the next comment, question for Andrea or the group? Not right now. Oh, go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Landa. Hi, you can.
Hi. I'm having trouble. I'm having to use my cell phone, so I'm having issues. But I just wanted clarity because I'm working on trying to get a couple of things going here in Fargo, and I'm working with Shannon Shanky, trying to get things going for it with the House of Hope. and possibly another place here in Fargo. But I just want to, I put something in the chat, but I want to make sure I heard things correctly. Do I need training with courses or something on doing screenings? So,
Yes, yep. So we do have training on how to get like into the screening portal.
okay,
And then get like the PDF and documents and everything like that. And then
okay,
when I train a person to screen, it's usually maybe not even a half hour. And I just kind of walk them through the steps on, getting the consent, getting their demographics, the actual screening. So yeah, that would be encouraged. And Shannon
okay.
will be able to do all of that with you too.
Okay, okay. I just wanted clarity on that because I'm in the process of trying to, especially with the House of Hope and maybe in another, some other places here in Fargo. So, um, so I just wanted clarity on all that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay,
Matt.
thanks.
Has
Yeah.
anybody completed the endorsement through the state of North Dakota? Completed all the courses to have the endorsement? Not in this group, okay?
Can you explain that exactly?
I'm referring to, I think one of the last slide, or almost to the last of the state has listed 5 courses for completion to obtain an endorsement status as a peer support specialist in North Dakota. What Andrea was referring to is you complete online, give the code for free training. If anybody had completed all 5 of them to achieve endorsement.
And I just
Now,
put
now
that
is that
in the
is that
chat.
is that part of the peer support training that we did?
Separate.
Oh, it's separate.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's an additional part. It's like, if you have a, if you were a nurse and then you get different, badges added on with,
Advanced practice.
yeah, advanced practice kind of thing. That's what it's kind of like. So.
Okay. Is that something that like Calvin and I would do? I mean, is that something that
It's
that
it's an optional. It's not a
okay.
requirement to provide peer support to individuals with brain injury. It's not a requirement. It's an optional, like I said, a badge, an endorsement is just like, you have above and beyond peer support
Okay.
credentials for brain injury.
And is that the online courses that you're talking about that we can take?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. So I'm going to switch over just to last couple of slides that I have for today. And remember, we have casual conversations after this. So for those of you that want to stay on, we reserve the one from 1:30 for any peer support topics in this, that you have something, a question that you want to have and want to get other peers suggestions on. Just general conversations it's about connecting all the peers in North Dakota, and having just a casual conversation. So if you're available, you can stay on for that. So for today, this call to action. So thank you, Andrea, so much for the content and the resources, super valuable. We know where we can go get them at the NDBN website as well. And so I would just want the group to think about individually, what is your role in brain injury support? And clearly we all have a role, especially if this group really understands not everybody even recognizes that they have a brain injury. And is it, important that we diagnose them? Not necessarily. We're treating, the person. There's a lot of resources you learned today. What are you going to take away from this? Maybe it's simply rowboats. And that was a good reminder for me. Oh yeah, rowboats. I know this. I need this. I use this. I'm a personal person, with a brain injury. And so I'm like, yeah, Like I should really print that out and have that with me. So maybe that's your action item, is to print out rowboats and have that with you. Maybe it's to go to the North Dakota Bend, website and, take one of their trainings. So I encourage you to look at this content, think about it, how you'll use it to serve individuals with brain injuries. This session, as I said, is being recorded. It will be available next week for viewing, and Andrea's completely made herself available to us as well. So thank you to all at ND Bin. We have multiple people from ND Bin on the call as well too. Our upcoming training for our lunch and learns, we're still sticking with the quarterly lunch and learn. So we are interested in hearing from you on what you would like to see as a topic, or maybe you would like to present a topic that you're excited about that would be beneficial to the peers in North Dakota. So our next lunch and learn is Friday, October 18th. We always do them over the noon hour on a Friday, the third Friday of the month. And reminder about military endorsement training that's available, and our contact information. So if you're interested in engaging with or starting a new local peer support specialist meeting, we have them in Minot and Bismarck that are active today. We are looking for individuals who'd want to expand them into other regions. So for example, Grand Forks would be a great location. Western North Dakota, Jamestown, Valley City. We don't have Fargo active right now. So if you would like to get involved with PSAND in initiating local peer support network meetings, we'd love to hear from you. So there's our contact information for that. And then lastly, our website, email. If you want to be on our mailing list and you're not, you can do this QR code and we'll get your information. And finally, for today, to get your CEUs, here is a link to complete. And this is where you can provide us what topics you're interested in as well too. The keyword that you're going to need is brain for your CEU. And there's a QR code for that as well too. Any final comments or questions from anybody? Excellent.
I put the link in the chat too, so you
Okay.
can pull it there too if you need it. So
Great. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Andrea, once again. This was excellent.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Great way to end the week. So, all right. Well, everyone have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for participating. If you want to stay on and have some casual connections, please do so. We'll just take a couple of minutes of downtime and get rocking and rolling on connecting. So thank you, everybody. And I'll stop the recording.